I enlisted in the Air Force in January of 1963 during pretty much the height of the Vietnam War. And I stayed in for 22 years and retired in January of 1985. During that period of time, of course, I went through an awful lot of changes in both from civilian to the military life. What was it like going into the military? Well, it's kind of like today getting into something new that you have not experienced in your life. It's something new. It's going into the unknown. It's leaving home, leaving parents, leaving friends, relatives, etc. like that. Even leaving a loved one. What's it like? Well, when I got on the plane, I felt so very insecure. Not knowing what was I going to be faced with. So all I knew that there was a war that was going on, a war that was very unpopular, a war that consisted of anti-war demonstrators. I thought, well, maybe there must be a reason for this. I had no idea about the war, what I would be faced with. Am I going to be in the war? I don't know. I have no idea. Not everyone in the military goes into a war type of climate. So that's the part that I didn't know what I was going to be doing. All I knew was I volunteered. I felt it was an obligation that I had for my country. There were 3 of us that went in. We decided we're going to go do our John Wayne thing. We're going to go and volunteer. We're going to go to Vietnam and get this war over with because it's going on long enough. So off we went. Well, when I left home, my parents said, just remember, there's always a home to come home to. So there's no such thing as once you're gone, you're out of the nest. So off I went. I received my basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. It was a new experience. Getting there was an experience. Arriving there was a bigger experience. What was met at Lackland was a surprise. We had our instructor standing there yelling at us in our face. We didn't know what was going on. And there was a lot of yelling and confusion because there was a lot of us. Let's face it, there was about approximately 80 of us that we were going to be living together for the next few weeks in basic training. That now we're a family. And the fact that we all, what it was the saying was cooperate and graduate. So that was the emphasis there. We were all divided into different squads, basically 4 squads, a squad leader, and then we had a number of people that were in the squad, usually approximately about 15 in a squad. In those days, of course, in '63, we lived in the old World War II barracks, cold during the winter. I went through basic in San Antonio from January, and I left there in March, early March, and went on to tech school. But the emphasis was we cooperate, we get along, and we graduate together. All of us graduating together. No one left behind. That's the emphasis. You didn't work as individuals. You worked as a team. Everyone went through together. If someone dropped behind, we helped that someone. That was the emphasis. We helped each other.
So there's no self-centered, I'm just going to finish this race by myself.
Yeah, none of that. At first it was that mindset, you know, I'm gonna make it through myself. I'm gonna get myself through. But then you find yourself all alone, because you are alone then.
Yeah. If
you're going to get yourself through and you're not thinking of anyone else, there's going to be a time when you're going to need help when you're going through basic training. So it's also a means of changing you, changing your thoughts, your mindset. Let's get together and get through together. What was it like? Okay. Learning to live with each other. We lived in open bays. So here your bunkmate was only a few feet apart. So you had to learn to get together.
Yeah.
Only a few feet. Everything was shared.
Yeah.
So everything, I mean everything is shared. So when you're in an environment of such, you start exchanging stories, let's say. What was it like living in Tennessee? What was it like living in Hawaii? What was it like living in New York? Things like that. So it was really nice. You get to know other people's background. And that was a warm feeling, because now you're a family. How long that's going to last, it just depends on the length of what basic training is. Well, for a lot of us in basic training, myself included, when it came to the actual part of training, the physical part of it was not too much of a problem for myself, but for some others, of course, it was difficult. Those especially living in the city area, from city areas. Of course, other country folks would, of course, accommodate them and help them. That's what the mindset is, help each other. I think one of the biggest challenge that a lot of us had, because weapons training was one of the largest challenge. Because for a lot of us, myself included, have never handled a long gun. Maybe we might have experienced something with a handgun, but not so much with a long gun. So in the sessions on the long gun, of course, included the M16 here. This is the weapon during that period of time, during the Vietnam War, that was used. The M16, which is a 5.56. In those days, of course, it was a full auto, had the capability of a full auto, and also selection. You can select for just semi-auto and then shoot 1 or 2 or 3 at a time. So basically, this was the weapon. So a lot of us had no experience with the long gun itself. This was used in Vietnam. A lot of us, of course, since we had no experience with the long gun, did not know how to handle it, how to maintain it, how to break it down. What are some of the small things involved with a weapon like this? This kept you alive in Vietnam. Initially, there were some problems with it, because at that period of time, it was a fairly new gun that was introduced into the military, and it was something that replaced the M1 Garand. This was an effective weapon, but the maintenance on it was one that had to be conducted at all times. Maintaining this weapon was fairly easy. It was reliable. It was a reliable weapon in the right hands if it was maintained. Although it's actually a .22 caliber, but this is a high velocity weapon itself. The caliber itself is a high velocity, but it was dependable to a certain degree. The environment that this gun was placed in, Vietnam, had an effect on the weapon itself. It had to be maintained. Without the maintenance on it, the proper maintenance of it, you had a problem. And this is your lifesaver, so you had to spend time with it. Myself, I never saw it, never handled it, never shot it until I went through basic training. Initially, we were to qualify on it. Everyone had to qualify in order to graduate out of basic training with this. I liked it. After I became accustomed with it, I used it out in the field. Throughout my Air Force career, the 22 years, we were required to qualify once a year, every year, especially when we went on mobility or we were on exercises like that. We had to qualify with this weapon.
Did you ever handle the M14?
No.
So by that point, they had completely
Well,
eliminated them.
well, they were using it at certain times in Vietnam. Some of it was used. Now, of course, you know, the M14 was the predecessor to this,
Yeah.
the weapon. There were a variety of weapons that was used in Vietnam. They tried to standardize things, you know, especially with the ammunition availability of it. And standardization in the military, of course, is essential in the supply system, especially. You can't have something that you have a difficult time, or so many variety of calibers that you have to try to keep stock with. So, but the M16 was utilized extensively in Vietnam. And thereafter Vietnam, of course, we still use it. Prior to me retiring out of it, we had, of course, we had these, and that was our weapon, that choice of weapon that we used when I was in civil engineering in Europe. What I did in Europe, of course, prior to retiring was on bare base operation. I was trained for to set up bare base operations to launch aircraft in an area where there was no airfield available. So I was primarily trained for desert out of Turkey. Our training ground was located out in the desert. But we used this along with some of us, our senior NCOs, of course. We had 48 of those M16 on our team of 50. The team composite was the trades. I was in mechanical, heating, refrigeration, air conditioning. We set up a base. We had to also maintain that base. We had to provide the security until security forces came in after we constructed a base to launch aircraft. Now, construction of the base was primarily because there was none available. We had to construct something where we had a squadron of aircraft coming in. Squadron is 18 aircraft and support people, which consists of about approximately 550 personnel. So then we had to provide security for that. And so we used the M16 to provide the security. And the senior NCOs, of course, carried the Smith & Wesson Model 10, 38 Special. Now what we carried was the Model 10, which was a 4-inch barrel on this thing. And it was strictly just a blued version of it. But it's similar to this. The only difference is the fact that it's a 6-inch barrel, and it's a chrome, nickel. I'm sorry, nickel plated on this. The ones we carried, of course, were blued. It's an excellent handgun. It's a sidearm. We also, the senior NCOs, of course, had to qualify with this to be able to carry as a sidearm.
So with the qualifications, did you have to do double action only, or would they allow you to cock the hammer?
We did single action, both single and double action, whichever suited you. They didn't care as long as you qualified.
Okay, so they didn't say you had to shoot 3 rounds double action and then 3 rounds?
No.
Okay.
No.
That makes it a lot easier.
All they cared about is, were you able to keep it in the black? If you can keep it on the black, we don't care what you do.
Yeah.
Double action, single action, fine. But just put the holes in the right spot and you're okay.
Okay.
So, and that's the same way it was with the M16. It was just a very simple course, you know. They want you to become familiar with it, because after you were done shooting each weapon, the M16 and the Smith & Wesson Model 10, you had to clean it.
Yeah.
You're not going to store it, you know, that's been fired and dirty, because these were kept in, of course, the armory.
Yeah.
We didn't keep it in our squadron area, of course. And anytime we went on deployment, we had to it was issued to us. Each of us had to go in and get it out of the armory, and you're responsible for the weapon and the upkeep of it from that point on until it goes back into the armory when your deployment was over with. How often was the deployment? It just depends on the political situations in a country. It just depended upon it, you know. So it's not very often that we had to pull it out. Just on deployments that we would pull it out. When we had exercises on the base, of course, we didn't pull it out because we weren't on a bare base operation. We were on our own base, so it was not necessary to have those taken out of the armory. But both these weapons were, they did their job, exactly what they were designed to do. Yes, you're going to hear stories from some of the guys, oh, I hated the M16 because we had some problems with it. Well, always the problems can be traced back to the maintenance of it, the upkeep. How well you treat the weapon, it'll perform. So, but I liked it. I thought both calibers, the .38 Special and the 5.56, were effective weapon if it's used correctly.
Yeah.
So it's like anything, you know, how it's used. So.
Was there anybody that served with you that would complain about the weapon system?
Yeah. I think one of the largest thing I heard was, especially with the Model 10 over here, is and 38 Special, because you don't shoot it that often is the biggest problem. And one of the things that the complaint was the fact that it had the tendency to ride up on you, just ride back up over, and the webbing on their hand would hurt. And if you shot an awful lot of it, then you felt the effect of it. Those, of course, the older, since these were for the senior NCOs, the senior people, they may have a little bit of arthritis, especially if they had on the early stages of carpal tunnel syndrome, of course, you know, then they suffered.
Yeah.
Because of the recoil of it and then the riding back of the weapon itself. But for us younger ones, of course, you know, we didn't have too much problems with it. Of course, if you notice that the grip area here is quite small, so those with depending upon the size of their hands, you know, in grasping the weapon, those with large hands, of course, you know, would be an overwhelming thing for them, you know, to try to grip that thing. And for those with small hands, of course, the tendency is to ride back on you. So that made it uncomfortable to shoot, and the accuracy of it then is, of course, questionable too, because control of the weapon is essential. So, but other than that, the weapon is quite reliable. These were also used as a part of the survival equipment that's issued to flyers. Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes. A friend of mine, we were shooting buddies. Of course, I'm also a skeet shooter. I'm an avid skeet shooter. He flew FAC in Vietnam, a couple of tours in Vietnam. FAC, of course, is Forward Air Controllers, is what it stands for. And he flew OV-10s over in Vietnam. His main weapon for defense was the Model 10. That's all he was issued. That's an issued item. Anything above that, it's not authorized. So here he is on a FAC plane. These guys are flying into a hostile area, and they marked the missions, and they call in airstrikes. These guys are the first guys in. They fly over a hot zone, and they're going to mark it with phosphorus markers. And that's what they're armed with, phosphorus bombs. They drop it, and it goes poof, little white spot over there, and then they call in for an airstrike. Okay, if the airstrike is approved, then the aircraft come in, and they do their thing. They either bomb it, strafe it, or rockets, or whatever is necessary to accomplish the mission. And if they are shot down, this is what they're going to use to survive, is a Model 10.
Did they have any spare, like, ammo, or was it just the 6 rounds and that's it?
They had spare ammo, but
They had something.
yeah, they had something. This was it. This is the something that they had. And so, what else did they rely upon? They relied upon their experience and instincts to survive. But if push come to shove, this was it. Okay, but
I have to keep checking this to make sure it's still on.
many of the guys use their own initiative. In a war zone, survival is key. Some of them relied upon the M16. This weapon, they would actually try and get this. They relied upon the M16 also. They would take and put it on their aircraft. Even though they were on an aircraft that had very little room on them, they made sure that they had something else. This is not unauthorized for them on the aircraft, on a FAC aircraft. But in a war zone,
They'd smuggle them on?
they just take it with them. So
Did they
that
ever have
alone,
to, like, take it apart so that...
no, they just take the whole thing out and say, are you going to challenge me? Are you going to take this away from me? I want to survive and come back. I want to go home. I want to go home after my tour. Because at least I was there for a minimum of 13 months. Now I was in country, you know, you're there for 13 months. Some as long as for 18 months. It just depends on the manning of the number of people available over there. And others relied upon other weapons such as the AK-47. The AK-47, of course, you'd have to obtain it in other means because it's not an issued item. It's not in the inventory of the military.
Would they get in trouble if they were caught, like, using the enemy's weapon?
Well, in a perfect world, they probably would be in trouble. But in a war zone, I don't think anyone would court-martial you because you're trying to survive.
Yeah.
I know I would not try, if I was in charge, of course, if I was responsible for an individual like that, and then he's trying to survive, I'm not going to take that away from him.
Yeah.
He's doing his job, what he was assigned to do, so I'm not going to take that away. If he wants to do that, that's fine. I look the other way. Use your own initiative and your own imagination. What are you going to do? You get in a situation like that, so.
So would they ever wear their gear so they could have the magazines on them? Like, would they take the gear from the VC? Like, how do they carry spare mags?
Any which way they can, even if they put it in their pockets. But usually what they did was they didn't get it from the VC because they didn't have contact. These are people that are flyers. They're pilots. So they got it by other means.
Okay.
When they go back to the base and they're on the base and if they have any time whatsoever, they knew certain people that was able to obtain the weapons and the ammunition. So that's who they got in touch with. Was that legal? No. No, but you know, myself, hey, I want to go home, you know.
Yeah.
That's the mindset. And so, well, anyway, enough of that, you know.
I just think that's interesting. I was just curious, like, you know, if some of the equipment would come back. Like, sometimes they'd have mag pouches for the AK. I didn't know if anybody would just, like, strap that on and, like, literally have the enemy's equipment on while fighting that enemy.
I'm sure if it was available, you would have it. Now we had, of course, we had EOD personnel, explosive ordnance disposal people, usually did the recovery on that because they had to go out, and the saying is, nobody is left behind.
Yeah.
So, even in a firefight afterwards, we go and we bring our people home. So take it from there, you know. I see it laying on the ground, well, it's there.
Yeah.
There's no one going to say, no, you can't have that.
And they were really good for that environment. Like, they just would run. And so I'm kind of curious if people would, like, stop using their M16 for an AK, or was it just people that wouldn't have access to either one?
No, initially, in the beginning, yes, there were people, of course, they would forego the M16. In the early stages of the Vietnam War, there was issues involving the M16. There were a lot of malfunctions, they said, with the weapon itself. Well, the malfunction was because of the care and maintenance, the cleaning of the gun. The weapon itself required extensive maintenance on it. You had to be, it's just like anything else. It's like your car. If you don't maintain your car, what's going to happen? It's not going to run. You have to provide it with some kind of maintenance, either yourself or you schedule it for maintenance. Periodic maintenance is required. Anything, any moving piece of machinery requires periodic maintenance. So is the M16. Yeah. There's no exception. It has to be cleaned.
Except the AK. You can just leave that
the
thing.
AK, of course, it's a different. It's like you're talking about. You might say apples and oranges because of the construction of the AK. Pretty much, you can pick the AK up off the ground and whatever ammunition you find on the ground, hey, that looks like it might fit, and you cram it in there and jam it in there, it's going to fire. Yeah. It'll shoot. So the bullet kind of wobbles on down the barrel, you know. It got out of the barrel. It's okay, you know. What's the accuracy of it? Big question mark. Well, maybe it might be able to hit the side of a barn, you know. But, yeah, that's a difference between that. How well it's built, you know, the machining on it and things like that, you know. So there's a little bit of play in the M16. So what? It's a little loose, but it works, you know. That's why you can pick up the ammunition if it looks close enough, then fits in there, and might need a little help to get in there. Well, it'll still go bang. Yeah. That was the thing, you know. I want to survive. I don't care how I survive, you know. I want to get the right equipment, you know, to make sure that I survive to go home.
So you trusted the M16?
Would I trust an M16?
Yeah.
If it's kept up, yes. I trust an M16. So if, you know, if I worked on it, I cleaned it, I know it's going to work. I do it with my own weapons. I shoot a lot, and I clean my own weapons. I make sure that it's going to work before I put it away. And when I take it out, I know it's going to work because I put it away. It's going to work. And so, yes, I would trust it then. I know some other people would say, oh boy, no, I would not trust it. I wouldn't lay my life on the line for it. Well, to each his own. Yeah. How well you take care of it, it's going to perform. If you don't take care of it, it's questionable.
So what would you do to upkeep your M16?
What would I do?
Yeah, what was your maintenance on them? What would you clean, and how would you keep it?
Okay, it depends on the environment too, also too. If it's an environment like this, after I shoot it, I use it like that, I would tear it down, take it all down, and give it a thorough cleaning. Pull the bolt from it. Just do everything that's required. And especially the gas ports, I pay particular attention with the gas ports, making sure that they're thoroughly clean. That's one of the most important thing on that. And also the ammunition. What kind of ammunition are you shooting? Are you shooting, you know, your commercial factory ammunition? Do you know anything about that ammunition? Are you shooting reloads in it? But in a combat situation, for example, the ammunition is provided by the federal government. Remington Arms is one of the major manufacturers on the ammunition that's supplied for the M16. Winchester Arms also too. They were suppliers also too. Federal also provided ammunition for it. So These are reliable companies that produce the ammunition for the M16 during the Vietnam era period of it. The design of the bullet, the weight of the bullet, the powders that were used, of course, you know, was compatible. They did extensive testing of the ammunition. Effectiveness of it, yes, it was effective within a certain degree. Velocity-wise, of course, that the ammunition, the factory ammunition velocity was roughly 3,250 feet per second on that. The bullet itself, 55 grain, spiral point bolt tail was effective. They say that a lot of people say that bullet tumbled when it hit anything. To a degree, it tumbles. It'll tumble. A lot of bullets will tumble on it. What's the design of it? It's designed to affect maximum damage to it. And since the design of that specific bullet was primarily as a means to kill flesh, in other words, it could be animal or people. The design of it, it's gonna tumble on you. It can and cannot. You know, it just depends on what it hits on it. I found, although it's a .22 caliber, I find that its effective range is 100 to 150 yards. Within that time, it's very effective on that range. When you think about it, that's quite a distance. 100 yards is the length of a football field.
Yeah.
So, and you go out to 150 yards, I know I would have today I would have a problem trying to see at 150 yards out. So what are you shooting at 150 yards? You know, you're gonna have to make sure you're shooting at something that you want shot. Because if you don't know what's at 150 yards, you have no business shooting at 150 yards.
So I have a question. I've talked to a couple people where they were saying that the 5.56 was not as effective as the 308, the 7.62 by 51, and so a lot of people were unimpressed by the M16 and would shoot more ammunition than required because they thought the round was just underpowered. Did you ever run into people saying things like that?
Yes, yes, yes. You have to consider now that the 308 bullet is a lot heavier than the 5.56. It's a lot heavier. The 5.56 is traveling just a little faster than that 308 bullet. But the fact that it has the energy behind it, it's the energy that's going to determine the effectiveness of it in this case. It depends on the design of the bullet on the 308. Yes, it took a lot of rounds. It was estimated in Vietnam it cost 1,000 rounds to kill one enemy. Approximately 1,000 rounds had to be fired before anyone was fatally shot. That's a lot of ammunition, a lot of bullets flying around, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, and at that high velocity, the M16 over there, sure, the bullet, if it hits anything, it could hit something as small as maybe a stalk on a heavy grass. Now that's going to have an effect on the flight of that bullet, whereas the 308 being a heavier bullet, it might have a little bit of an effect, but not the effect that an M16, the 5.56 would have on it.
Yeah.
Because of the weight of the bullet itself and the amount of energy and inertia behind that particular bullet and the design of the bullets. Of course, you know, the 5.56 is a spiral point, means it's a pointed bullet, whereas the M16, not the M16, but the 308, of course, could be a round nose, or it could be blunt.
Yeah.
So it makes a difference on it, the flight of the bullet, the energy, the impact, etc., and the results. Yes, you're going to find that there is a big difference between the two of them. Yes, you're going to hear people saying, oh, that M16 is not as effective. I have to shoot a 20-round magazine versus 1 or 2 shots with the 308. We use the 308 and the machine gun. We had in the early years, of course, back in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, they used it in the M60 machine gun. That was quite effective on that, the 308 caliber. I know on our team we had 2 of them. We had two M60s that we had. We had 48 M16s on our 50-man team and 2 M60s. So when we set up a perimeter of security on our bear base operations, we deployed 2 M60s also too in strategic areas that we set up. But it provided an excellent firepower for us on that, along with our M16s. So.
I have a question. Do you have any pictures of yourself when you were in the service?
I have a few, but photos, as to photographs like that, no. I had a lot of, you might say, slide pictures, and that's pretty much it. I'm trying to think of where I've got some, but I just never brought any with me.
So you're wearing a patch on your jacket. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Oh, okay. This patch is with, it's actually from Korea. When I was stationed in Korea, I spent almost 13 months in Korea. At Kunsan Air Base, I was assigned there. Our patches, okay. Each one of our here, I'll show you one that I was in cryogenics. Primarily, I ran cryogenic plants. What's cryogenics? It's a Greek word for study of low temperatures. We generated both liquid and gaseous oxygen and nitrogen products. What's that for? Many of us are familiar with the medical oxygen you see in the hospital, the green cylinders, people on medical breathing oxygen. Well, we fill those cylinders. Aviators breathing, same thing. They were in the green cylinders also too. Something that's familiar is you board an airliner, for example, and they say in the event that we lose cabin pressure, you're going to see these yellow masks come down and take that. But what you're breathing is just air, compressed air. We fill those also too for civilian aircraft and military aircraft also too. But basically our fighter aircraft, fighter bombers and everything, use a liquid product which we produce. It looks like aqua velva shaving lotion, but it's at a temperature of minus 297 degrees below zero. And it's liquid. That's oxygen, pure oxygen at 99.5. But that's stored on the aircraft in a liquid form, and then it's converted to a gas form, and the pilots breathe that when they fly above 15,000 feet. That's necessary for them to be on a certain degree of oxygen. But this is one patch. Since you asked me about patches over here, now this is one of the patches that I had on my uniform, my work uniform, on the back of it. And this is something one of the guys had designed and that we use. But this is a patch that pertained to the base that I was at. When you're in the military, you're assigned to different squadrons and different, like we have headquarters, Air Force, 5th Air Force, 8th Air Force, and things like that. But I was basically at a lower level on the basis. I was basically assigned to a supply squadron, and we had patches over there. I didn't think to bring any of the patches with me. The different patches, Tactical Air Command that I was primarily in. Then we had the European Command also too, patches that you had on your uniform, along with the American flag that we had also too. But then there were other patches like the ones out in PACAF, Pacific Air Force, when I was over in Korea. And then in Japan, I was stationed in Japan, Germany. these patches identified you as to what command that you were in, and to a degree as to what squadron you were in. Also, I was normally in the supply squadron in the fuel section, the base fuel section. And there would be different patches in some cases. This also here, it's also the squadron I was in, they had a book. They made a yearbook over there. This is a yearbook of all the people that were assigned to the squadron. So some of us had patches, some of us had a yearbook over here. So this was the one that was in Korea that I was at. What I mean about when I first, when we first went through basic training, where we're all a family, we're one, you work as a unit. That's why we have patches like that. You have patches, you have a book, a yearbook like this, and it features all those that are assigned, what their jobs are, etc., like that, things like that. It's a morale booster, and it's a way like, it's like a family with family album pictures like that. What I did also too is I have a collection. I just put real simple collection of a variety of things that I had. By the way, this is my son. He was stationed at Eglin Air Force Base. See, when I retired, my son went into the Air Force and took over for me. So today we have 2 master sergeants retired from the Air Force. We have almost 45 years between he and I in the United States Air Force. He was actually designing, his assignment was to work on a weapons system on the F-15E model. So he was out in the Gulf along with the pilot. He was flying backseater actually. And they were testing some of the weapons out there. And he just wanted to take a selfie out there, and he sent it to me. He says, "Hey, Dad," he says, "this is me." He said, "I'm at work." He says, we're testing some weapons out there. And I don't know if any of you remember that, remember they had this big bunker buster bomb that they developed, a 10,000-pound bomb called the Moab. That was designed at Eglin Air Force Base. My son was working on that Moab. And it's a great big bomb, and it's supposed to be a bunker buster, and it also cleared in jungle areas a landing zone. If you drop that, and it would, in a forested area, it would clear a landing zone to where our helicopters would be able to drop troops into an area that's just covered with vegetation. I put together different things in my this album over here. I just wanted to show something like that. Oh, I can.
I didn't want to get a whole bunch of dirt on it.
But anyway, it's I just put, this is a award that I had. It's called the Air Force Commendation Medal. I have 2 of them. I was awarded 2 of them. But this is what I did in the Air Force here. I operated, these are mobile plants. These were designed to be airlifted into a bare base, and you set these up and you generated oxygen and nitrogen for the pilots. And then we try to, as a group, as a family, we get together. This is where I was conducting with the commander of the Air Force out there in Korea. He was a commander of Air Force on Kunsan Air Base. So he came down to the section where I was at, and I was giving him a briefing over here. This is also the same thing, but this is over in Aviano, Italy. He was brigadier general also too. He was the group commander, 40th Tactical Group Commander. But I also taught cryogenics over at Chanute Air Force Base over here. So these are some of the classes, these are some of the basic students. And these basic students, the average age was 19 and a half years. These were people out of the high school. And for some of them, this is the first time that they ever left home, is to go into basic training and into the Air Force. Most of them, of course, they enlisted for a period of 4 years. So these are people that had never heard of a cryogenic plant, much less spell it. And this is my son. He was in the Air Force at this time. The picture was taken, I think it was about 10 years in the Air Force then. He took my place when I retired. So there's two of us that retired from the Air Force with 22 years or more in the Air Force. So yeah, we became an Air Force family. I also got a letter from a student at Muhammad Seymour Junior High School, and it was a letter thanking me for my service. She wrote a letter to me. I don't know where she got my name and address from, but all of a sudden this appeared in the mail, you know, and so
And you also told me that the military service didn't start with you. Your father was also in the military, wasn't he?
Yes, my father was in the what's called the National Guard. It was before World War II was started. He told me a little bit about that. He worked at Pearl Harbor at that time. This all took place before the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941. And he described to me what it was like on December 7, 1941. Sunday morning, he said, this happened early Sunday morning around 7 o'clock in the morning, that he heard that the bombing going on, and of course the strafing that was going on. At that time where we lived, see, I wasn't born at all at that time. I came along 6 months after that. So, but anyway, he said he worked on Pearl Harbor, and he heard that the bombing was going on. Of course, in those days, you know, communications and television isn't like what it is today. But he said, he told Mom, he says, I'm going to go down to Pearl Harbor and watch the maneuvers. He says, sounds like they're having maneuvers going on. And so he got in a car and drove down to Pearl Harbor. About halfway down, he said, the police stopped him and says, you need to go home. And he says, what's going on? I want to go watch the maneuvers. He says, that's not maneuvers. He says, Japan is attacking us. They're attacking Pearl Harbor. So my dad was, oh my God. So he turned around, went home. And he told Mom, turn the radio on. He says, Japan's attacking Pearl Harbor. And so that's where they got the news that we're being attacked. And it was one of those surprise attacks on December 7th in the early mornings, because it happened at 7 o'clock in the morning. A lot of people were still in bed or going to church, getting ready to go to church. So when the initial attack was over, of course, you know, he worked there, and he couldn't go to work. He started to go down to work over there, but then he was turned around again, because they said everything is right now is they don't know what's going to happen. It's nothing but confusion down there, you know, on a Monday morning. So the best thing is right now for you to go home and listen to the radio. And so that's what he had to do. He had no other choice. everything was all disrupted. The phone system was disrupted, even though that's what he did. He was a telephone installer repairman for civil service. And so finally he got the word that, yeah, we're going to be at war, we declared war. Roosevelt declared war. So he and my uncles, his brothers, decided, well, let's go down and enlist. Well, they went down to enlist in the Army. They wouldn't take my dad, of course, because he was already in the National Guard at that time, the Guard unit. And he was also married, and I had 2 older brothers. So they said, you're a family man, and your wife is pregnant also too, so we don't need you, just report to your Guard unit like that, and they will of course assign you. But they took my uncles, 2 of my uncles, they enlisted in the Army. One fought over in Europe. He was in France and Italy. The other fought out in the Pacific. He made a couple of landings until he was shot on Guam. Then that ended his Army career. He survived that, but of course he couldn't walk very well because he was shot in the hip. So that ended her career. The war, of course, I believe that was the last war that the United States ever won. World War II. Mm-hmm. The Korean conflict, of course, it's actually, in actuality, it's still going. We're on a truce, and it's been that way since the mid-1950s. It's a divided country, the North and the South. In fact, the North right now currently is one of our adversaries. The way things go and anymore politically, anything could erupt. It's hard to say. So that's just something we just have to live with. A truce that has lasted for that length of time, that's a long time. Since the middle of 1950, 1954 I think is with the armistice on that. But what was it like?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, what was your opinion on Vietnam? That's a controversial question, but somebody that was very much involved in the war, how do you feel about it?
At first, yes, I was. I thought, you know, like I said in the beginning, I enlisted because the 3 of us enlisted because the war had been going on long enough. It was going on about roughly actively about 4 years prior to my enlistment. I believe we went into Vietnam in the 50s.
I may have to stop first. Somebody's coming down.
Oh, but anyway, we went in the late 50s after the French had left. And so, but I went in because of the war. Was it a popular war? No, it was the most unpopular war. Anti-war demonstrations going on both in and around the colleges. We had problems with that. Then it spread out into the outlying areas wherever there's large gatherings of people. Our presence there in Vietnam was something that was the controversial thing. It was, is it right to go over to another country and try to change their way? Vietnam was a communist country. I went in to do my share, my part. I felt obligated to do my part for the country. That alone was the catalyst, you might say, for me to volunteer to go to Vietnam. After I was out of tech school here at Chanute, and my first assignment was out on the West Coast at George Air Force Base. And one of the first things I did after clearing in base was to put in a volunteer statement to go to Vietnam. I was volunteering to go to Vietnam. I wanted to go to Vietnam. And so did the other two guys, but we weren't stationed on the same base. That was our agreement, that we were going to volunteer to go to Vietnam. So I submitted my request, and I was at George Air Force Base for roughly about 2 years. They didn't reassign me, and I kept the volunteer statement in my records over there. And the job I did was basically for Bear Base operation deployment to areas like Vietnam. And yes, we were sending guys in my career field to Vietnam to do Bear Base operation because everything was new. We didn't have equipment over there. And I tried to get on those, but no luck because they had too many people that were volunteering to go. I finally was able to leave the base, but I had to. I had to take someone else's assignment to leave that base. So the person I took was, he managed to go to Vietnam, and his assignment came out after he accepted the assignment to Vietnam. And so I said, I'll take his assignment because it was to Japan. So I thought, if I got to Japan, I could get closer to Vietnam, and the chances are would be improved to go to Vietnam. So I took that assignment. I went to Japan. I was stationed at Yokota Air Base, and I got there and I did the same thing. I volunteered to go to Vietnam, and the anti-war sentiments was really increasing. When I left George Air Force Base, I flew up to San Francisco International Airport. Well, upon arrival there, of course, I was met with anti-war demonstrators, both inside the terminal and outside. Inside the terminal, of course, they would let their presence to you be known. You talk about walking down in the terminal to check in. These war demonstrators would come up to you and shoulder butt you to try to knock you down, try to get you to fight them. They were also, their presence were outside the terminal area and out on the highway. And so the only way to get to Travis Air Force Base was Greyhound bus. So all the military personnel was on the, where would be on the Greyhound bus going to Travis, Fairfield, California. So they met us outside. Bus driver, of course, gave us instruction, all windows up, because they're going to throw things at us. Sure enough, they were out there. They threw whatever they could get their hands on at us, from rotten eggs all the way up tomatoes and anything else. And they would beat the side of the bus as the bus went by. It was like going down a gauntlet of people. And that's how we were treated. They spit at you. The profane language and descriptions, yes, a lot of that, quite vocal. And it's hard to believe that World War II, the people were together. The factories, they did things, they produced things targeting the war effort. And this was something else that, with war demonstrators over there treating you like that, and it begins to make you wonder about our presence in an overseas area like that, and that far away, halfway around the world. And we're going to try and change a country, the society of people, and their thinking. Is that right? The right thing to do? I don't know. How would we feel if another country came in and tried to change our way of living, politics? So how would we feel? Would we feel the same way? But anyway, that's how we left the country going overseas. A lot of the guys were wanting to get off the bus and talk to these anti-war demonstrators that were yelling obscenities and throwing things at us. Probably a little bit of physical talking also too, you know. Let's try and change their ways, you know.
Yeah.
But that was not allowed because we were out briefed prior to leaving our home base to go overseas that we are not to confront these anti-war demonstrators or we will be court-martialed for that. What's called an Article 15 is a minimum that we would be administered for any confrontation with demonstrators, so we had to stay put. But I was overseas for 3 years, then I came back and I was met with the same thing also too. At the bus terminals up in Fairfield, yes, they were up there also too in California. So we were greeted on the way back into the country, and of course you call baby killers and all that kind of things, you know. Spit at, thrown at, and whatnot, you know. But you have to grin and bear it. And anyway, that's how we were greeted also too. Of course, eventually the war ended in 1975. We actually started pulling out in 1974. I think it was somewhere there. We started getting out of it. For a lot of the returning military personnel, a lot of them trying to seek employment, return to civilian life. For a lot of them, they had a difficult time because people would always question that employers, employees, other fellow employees, primarily because of their mannerism, their dress, and appearance. So they were questioned about what kind of participation were you involved in the war and etc. like that. And for some of them, they lied. No, I wasn't. They needed a job, so they would lie. No, I wasn't in the military. I was in the military, but I never went to Vietnam. I never was involved, and I didn't believe in the war effort, and et cetera, like that. And for some of them, they were ashamed that they actually was in the military and that they were in Vietnam. It's hard to believe that a person could feel that way because of the sentiments of the country itself. And here they are going into an environment like that to try to maintain and a continued life here in the United States, that people would feel that way. And you know, we take an oath of enlistment, and the oath basically is that we are to defend the Constitution of the United States, both foreign and domestic. Many of us, we take that oath seriously to this day. I've been retired for a number of years, and I take that oath. My son did the same thing too. We feel that is, we took an oath. You take an oath, you live by the oath. Politicians do the same thing too. Hopefully, we try to think that they do live by it, but sometimes I begin to wonder about that. Some of the decisions that they make in Congress is borderline, but anyway, we live up to that oath. Many of us, when we see the American flag, it's a symbol of the country, of our country and our way. We took that oath to defend that. We stand up, we salute it. We pray to God that we never, ever have to have another civil war in this country. It's not necessary. We don't have to go to that extremes. But I don't know. Uh,
Well, I'm about out of battery, so I got about like 5 minutes left. But I just want to say thank you for the interview. Thank you for your service.
You're
I
quite-
appreciate it.
You're quite welcome, Chris. I don't talk about it too much, especially for interviews like that. You ask me about an interview, that's fine.
Well, thanks for coming on, because more people are coming out.
Well, you're quite welcome.
But I would like to get some footage of you shooting that gun before we leave.
Okay. You know, the last time I shot it was when I was on active duty, and that's how long ago it is.
Really?
Yes.
So you've not shot this configuration in that long?
Not the M16. Now I've shot my Rock River. I've shot a lot of it, you know, in my Rock Rivers. You ready?
Yep.
Not like mine, adjustable stock.
Yeah, no, it's just one size.
Yeah, one size fit all. Shoots good.
Yeah?
Rebuild. You'll rebuild.
Yeah, it's definitely a rebuild.
Mhm. It shoots really good.
What'd you think of her?
Nice shooting.
Does it kind of bring
more?
back any kind of memories?
Yep. You got more. You got more ammo?
Yeah, you want to shoot with it more?
Yeah.
Okay. You like it?
Yeah, I like it. It's still clean and everything in there.